Hello everyone and welcome to Vitamins presented by St. Luke's, Episode 7. I'm Adam Webster. Great to have you back, Fabian Krislovich.
Great to be back. You know, I kind of saw on the social, I thought maybe you guys were forgetting about me, but...
You went on the road.
We had a it's been a busy start to the season. We had a hectic road trip. I think we were on the road for 8-9 days, going up to Lonnie, Sydney, Perth, and then we came straight into a game. Taking a bit of a breath now. You know, we had that Brisbane game and then the FIBA break, so... It was nice to, you know, take the foot off the pedal a little bit, so to speak. But everything's been really good.
And you missed a bronze medalist. Alana Smith was in here last episode.
Keeping the theme of Olympians on the podcast. We've been pretty good at it.
Absolutely, and very, very entertaining, might I add, Alana Smith with the morning hands. It was a learning for me. Today we have not one but two guests on Vitamins by St. Luke's, two amazing women who we're lucky to be chatting to in a double episode. Shortly we'll chat to Dr. Rebecca Chabot to deep dive into the science of happiness and brain health and mental wellness. But first up in today's ep is someone that you're very familiar with, Michelle Weeks, who brings a whole new perspective on the Jack Jumpers, motherhood and a healthy life. Michelle's a former businesswoman, a teacher, a life coach, an author, a mum of two young kids, a podcast host, and she happens to be married to Agent 97, former player and now assistant coach, Jared Weeks. Welcome to Vitamins, Michelle.
Thank you so much.
So
a very
good to
kind
have you.
introduction there.
Not your first podcast. You have your own podcast. Let's open it up with a plug.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have my own podcast and it is called A Mother's Mind. It talks all about mindset, mental load and motherhood. So candid stories, experiences all around those three topics.
You can hear A Mother's Mind wherever you hear podcasts, so make sure you jump onto that. Even though I'm not a mother, I'm father, I still listen to A Mother's Mind. I got a lot from your mental load discussion about how to sort of lighten the mental load on the mum. It's something that in my household we've talked about. It's a very prevalent thing. The mental load is sometimes pretty crippling for mums, so being able to decentralise that a little bit, it's really important.
Absolutely. That is effectively the area that I help mums in my own business, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about that, but it is vital for every person in the household to understand it and to invest some time into it. So well done for you for listening. Yeah. Any other dads out there? Come on down.
Fab, this is a bit different to our first 6 episodes.
It is. It's going to be... I'm very excited to talk to Michelle a little bit about, I guess, the first non-jack jumper in the traditional spirit of things. So it's going to be awesome to get your perspective and just learn a little bit about you and your journey and how that relates to everything.
Well, I'm excited.
You see a completely different side of this team, right? We've had obviously staff, we've had players, we've had people outside of the organisation on this show, but you're close enough to the organisation without being a member of the organisation. So
exactly right.
What's your perspective on what's been grown over in Tasmania here for the last 3 or 4 years?
Oh, well, it has been such an incredible journey. I think for us, Jared played in many NVL teams over his very long career. He is very old now. We were really lucky to see a structure and an experience of many different organisations, and we jumped at the call when, funny story, Jared got the call for a coach to come down here as a player while I was giving birth to Freddie, our son. And I don't even joke about that. I mean, while I was in the room, the active labour room, Jared had to pop out to take a call from coach.
How many hours before the actual birth was the call? Are we talking cutting it fine here?
We're talking like less than 2 hours.
I almost missed the birth of my son parking the car, so I can,
He did that on our second go.
Oh, great.
He's really...
Yeah. Can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was an opportunity that we jumped at straight away. Jared had obviously played with the Chargers a couple of years before that, so we knew Tassie. We had been down here a little bit before. I think coach tried to do the hard sell and realised pretty quickly, actually they're on board, so I can ease off on that a little bit. It's just been the most incredible journey for us as a family. We moved down here when Freddie was 6 weeks old, and so it was obviously a huge moment in our lives, but seeing what has been built down here and the culture that's being created, and I often say to people, it's not just outside, right? It is, we are living it, we're breathing it, we're feeling it every single day, and a lot of organisations have values and they sit up pretty on a wall, but they're not living them every single day, and I feel like here we really do sense that, and we live it every day. So we're very, very grateful and fortunate to have been a part of the experience from day one.
Fab, we've talked a lot about the families, the kids we spoke about with Clint a couple of weeks ago, but obviously the entire family's been kind of let into this space and embraced as part of the club.
I know, it's an awesome thing. It's always a lot of fun when, the families come in, especially if we have like a off day where we're in there working out and you get the families in there and the kids, we spoke about before, and they're just playing on the side. We join in before warming up, or we just got done. Having some fun with them. Yeah, just having that open, door policy to everyone's family, and it's really good. Whenever we're training, you've come. I always see you a couple of times.
Weekly.
Getting in there while just to be on the sideline, and it's always nice to see the family and friends of the players, being welcomed so greatly into the team.
Michelle, a lot of our audience are likely to be really familiar with you and your story, but we'd like you to give a bit of an overview of your experience in your professional life. We'll get into the personal stuff and Jared in particular later. But can you tell us the area of expertise and how your career's kind of evolved to where it is today with the podcast and with the work that you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I was a primary school teacher for many, many years and worked when we were traveling for Jared's career. I continued to work as a teacher, but in the end it was just really difficult to get accredited everywhere that we were moving, and I would be out of work while that was happening. And in the end, I had a very specific day that I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was talking about life coaching, and I knew from that moment onwards that was exactly what I wanted to be doing. So went off and got my life coaching certification and have been running my own business ever since that day. So at this point in time, I help particularly mums and women really to build a sustainable and a supported mental load. And there have been so many studies that show that the women and the mums, particularly of households, really carry so much more of the mental load, and that the impact that has on them and their life and their ability to invest in themselves and to have interests and hobbies and to be present there's so much evidence out there that there's a huge cry for women to be supported in that domain. So that is what I do, and I do that through one-to-one coaching. I have a membership called a Mother's Mind membership. I have a published mindset journal and obviously the podcast. So yeah.
Looking forward to getting into a lot more of this, Fab, but let's kick off with the starting five.
I know, we love the starting five, just to learn a little bit more about, the personal side of you and some things about yourself. So, we talk back, I guess you're talking about motherhood, going back now to when you were younger. What are some of the favourite memories you had, growing up and of your childhood?
Yeah, so I was born in South Africa. I grew up in South Africa, and a lot of my childhood was spent just traveling. We did a lot of camping throughout Africa, a lot of travel there. And then when I was 9, we moved back over to Australia. So we went kind of from the bush to the sea, and I have so many amazing memories in both of those places with amazing people. So yeah, a bit of a wild life so far.
Not the traditional upbringing. I guess you're going all over the place.
Exactly.
So, that's awesome. Who have been, we've spoken a lot on this podcast about people and influences and shaping their lives. So who have been for you, some of the people that have shaped your career, shaped your life?
Yeah, so I would say that, obviously my parents, my dad has passed now, but he was a really big influence on my life and how I look at life, and sort of going through that experience of him passing has influenced so much of how I want to live my life going forward as well, and the choices that I've made. So definitely him and my mum, of course, and family. I would say there was a coach that I worked with early on. Her name is Sam Laura Brown, and she does a lot of work around perfectionism, and that was a massive step for me in my own life, but in professionally as well, is uncovering the thinking of perfectionism and what that actually meant, and not just crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And that has really allowed me to be so much more courageous in my life and really get into the growth mindset and attempt things that I probably never would have if I didn't know about it. And she really helped me through that. And then I'd say Brene Brown as a teacher. And in that space, she is such an incredible researcher and has such an amazing way of articulating her thoughts and her ideas. And she has inspired me in so many different ways. So there's my list.
Beautiful.
Amongst a whole heap of people.
I'm sure we all have so many people who impact us. I think you may have touched on it before, but when exactly did your career evolve, and when did that change happen, and when was that, I guess, period in your life?
Yeah, so that was 2019 for me, was probably one of the most pivotal years professionally of really getting to the point where I was saying to Jared, I am not getting the fulfillment that I was getting out of teaching by moving so regularly and starting new and always being the new person and always needing accreditation and those sorts of things. So that was a year that I decided to try something else, which was huge, because if there's any teachers out there, it's like such a vocation, right? It's so much a part of your identity and who you are. And it was a real challenge for me to say, okay, I can step away from this when it was all that I'd ever really imagined for myself and loved it so much for such a long time. So yeah, 2019 was a big year for me.
Yeah, it's a leap of faith, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is. And starting my own business, I mean, I'd never done that. So it was so much learning and so much growth and courage that I had to have, and obviously heaps of failures along the way. But yeah, just really giving it a go, stepping into the arena, you know?
On that, I've been playing basketball my whole life. You're talking about being a teacher and calling. I've got no idea what the next step would be. So it's
we've obviously gone through that with Jared recently. So
making that jump, I guess, when you've had this identity for so long, must have been a big courageous decision to make.
It was huge.
And you spoke about your upbringing, being in a lot of different places growing up. You spoke about Jared. He's played in a lot of different places. Where have been some of the most enjoyable places to live, and where have been, I guess, where some places where it's been a bit more of a challenge?
I think it's a really hard one, because retrospectively, I've loved everywhere that we've lived. Whether that's been the experience that I've had in the moment is probably not really aligned. But when I think back about it, there are everywhere that we've never lived somewhere that I've been like, that is off the list, which is a great thing. But I think when we were in Europe and we were living in Germany, obviously we had the language barrier. It was winter there. We were in a tiny, 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 tiny town. And that was a really challenging experience for me. The boys were on the road a lot. I was at home in this tiny town by myself. So it was quite isolating in that way. If you would ask me now, I'd be like, it was great. What do you mean? I loved it. But that was certainly challenging at the time. Places that I've loved, obviously Tassie. We've chosen to stay here. We've bought a house. We've settled down. We love it here. We also loved Cairns. We lived up there for a couple of years, and no kids, sunny, lots of water. That's me down to a T. So that was, those are probably the ones that I would say.
Finally, a bit of the hard hitter. What is your why?
Yes, it's my why, I would say, is to create ripples of impact in the world for myself, for my family, for people around me. I know it sounds really cliche, but I really would love to be able to leave the world in a better, kinder, nicer way than I had entered it. And for me, that is done through my work, through the way that I interact with people, through the way that I show up in my life, and knowing that if I can impact someone, their ripples of impact are going to expand, and we can make the world a better place. So that's what I would say.
I love that, ripples of impact.
I like it. Yeah, it's very visual. You can clearly see.
I'm a visual learner.
We've got a really interesting focus topic today. We've, over the last few weeks in episodes, have talked about a lot of basketball experiences and sporting experiences. This is one that can resonate with anyone that has, a partnership, a family, mental load and exhaustion, and how you sort of process and accept sacrifice. And you've had to make sacrifices in your life and relationship, being married to a professional sports person. I want to start with mental load as a concept, because we've referred to it a few times on the show so far. What do you define it as? What is the mental load?
Yeah, such a great question. Now, there are so many different definitions and areas that people would talk about. For me, I would say that it is really all of the thinking tasks that you have in your day, in your household. And I like to address them in two main categories. So the first would be the logistical side of things. So you have the planning, the organising, the decision-making, the communicating, all of those really logistical sides, which, as I said before, often they fall on the mother or the woman in the household, and there's lots of studies to show that that's the case. The second side of the mental load that I focus on a lot is the emotional mental load. And that is really just holding space for people, for emotions in our lives. And, you know, I'm the mum of a toddler and the emotions are really huge. And so the emotional mental load that I carry in supporting him and my loved ones through their life as well as myself is part of the thinking that goes on in my head every single day, right?
Can mental load be in different types of relationships, like housemates and those sorts of things as well? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I think we oversee, or one of the, I guess, mistakes that I often see is that people say we want it to be shared equally or we want to try and lower it. And I like to think about it as if you are a functioning adult in the world, you are going to have a mental load. Like, it's actually a privilege, right? It means that things are happening in your life and you are going to carry a mental load. So the idea is not, the goal is not to get to zero mental load. The goal is to get to a place where your mental load feels sustainable in the longer term sense and supported, right? And when you can get to a place where you have the mental load, you're accepting that that's going to be part of your life and you can feel like it is something that much longer into your life, you're not going to burn out from it. You're not going to go through, I guess, like the volcano effect, which I like to call when things just build up, and then you explode, you take it out on your family, you either internalize it or you burn out completely and you just want to run to a cabin in the woods. That is not a sustainable way to carry your mental load. Equally, I know a lot of the clients that I work with are feeling really unsupported in their mental load. So they feel like it's all on them, which often is, you know, they feel like they're drowning, they feel like they're overwhelmed, and that is not a supported mental load. So we work on a whole heap of strategies to the skills that they can do, that they can learn to create a mental load, which every human is going to have, that allows them to feel like they can still be present in their life and still do things outside of just the constant whirlwind in their head. So
I want to link this back to basketball because it's a basketball podcast. I'm sure you've had moments on the court where you've seen yourself as the only one able to score, the only one able to defend, or, you know, you're putting up Jokic numbers in the NBA1 Central. But I'm sure there have been scenarios where you or your teammates have been on the court and thought, it's all up to me, or I'm the one that's doing the little things, doing the dirty work. And that kind of lends itself a little bit to
it's, I guess, a little bit of that. I'll give me not so much the NBL. I'll try to never really get there too much. But as you said, I feel like when you see that happen, and I guess when you're on a basketball court, when it does happen, you get to see it play out, and it never really works out.
Yeah.
If, you know, in those cases where, you know, I've been on the court and if I'm trying to do everything myself, very, very rarely has it come to the net benefit of the team. And I guess I'm imagining that's what it's like when you see when you're working with people, if you're carrying too much and it's unsustainable, it's not going to be to the net benefit of everyone.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's something that you do see play out in a team. And when you're talking, I'm thinking about all the ways in which, you know, we try to, in our team, we're trying to build each other up and make sure no one's trying to do too much, and everyone, I guess, feels supported. And, you know, we've spoken a bit about, I guess, vulnerability in our team, on this team. And I think that's one way, you know, Scott gets us to open up to each other and try, I guess, support each other and kind of see what's beneath the surface a little bit more, just to help in that aspect. So I imagine that's a pretty important part of, I guess, what you're trying to help people with.
Absolutely. Definitely going a little bit deeper into all of those deeper level skills that are really stopping us from sharing it, right? Yeah. And usually it's so easy to say, oh, just share it, just give it to someone else, or just tell them that you need help. But really the things that are stopping us from achieving that are deep thoughts and deep beliefs that we have about ourselves and our position in the world, and, you know, who we are and what that means about us, that stops us from actually taking that next step. So.
And professionally as well, in your professional life, I'm sure there'd be situations where you're a part of any team or organisation, and, you know, you're feeling that it's all up to you, or that there's a little bit more on you than there are potentially others in the office or in your team, and that can be pretty debilitating and pretty frustrating and lead to some pretty bad mental outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in any scenario where someone doesn't feel like they are supported in it, whether it's in a team or in a professional sense, or in the household, it's, of course, the outcome is going to be different ways that they feel like they're not living out a purpose, it's less meaningful, it's less satisfying, and that, of course, leads to way more impacts in their life personally. But in terms of if you are part of a team and you're working towards a common goal and someone's not feeling satisfied or like they're doing meaningful work, that's of course going to lead to less outcomes and less results. So
we've spoken about, I guess, what happens if we're not successful in sharing our mental load. What are some strategies, I guess, that, we all can implement to help manage and share the mental load? And I guess what will the benefits of that be?
Yeah. Okay. So there's thousands of different strategies, right? And I could talk to you for weeks and weeks and weeks about this. But I would say really the most impactful is to make it tangible, right? Our brains are really intricate places that are often swirling with lots of information. And the first thing that I always say is we are going to, when it's vague, it's much easier for us to catastrophize what's going on.
Yeah.
So if we can make it tangible, and the way that I like to do that is to journal. So literally just stream of consciousness journaling, where you allow yourself permission to just catch anything that's going on and put it down on paper. We want to do that without shaming or judging ourselves for what might be coming out, right? But actually giving ourselves a valve, a release valve, that we are able to get it down on paper.
Yeah.
Or voice note it, or whatever, medium works for you. And from that place, you can then start to say, okay, yeah, it's a lot. I was really exaggerating this one part and it felt much bigger than it maybe actually is when I make it tangible and I anchor it down somewhere. So I'd say that if you are new to this space and you feel like your brain is about to explode, just make it tangible, make it simple, give yourself a little practice each day that you can get it from your head onto paper, anchor it somewhere. And from that place, you can then start to see trends. You can take action. You can begin to communicate with people, and you can really just begin to learn or recognize the deeper level skills that may help you to get to a place where it's sustainable, get to a place where it's supported.
We've talked a lot about, we've danced around the topic of Jared's career. I think it's now time to talk about your mental load and how that's sort of evolved over time. You've had to make a lot of sacrifices to be able to move around being married to a professional sports person. How do you deal with that? How do you process that? How do you reconcile what you've had to give up, what you've had to sacrifice in order to support Jared's career?
Yeah, look, it is. It's a huge commitment, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not a normal life. It's our normal life, but in terms of society, it's not a normal life. And so there have been lots of discussions, lots of choices. We've had to be a team in our relationship since we were very, very young, and making sure that we're on the same page with the decisions that are made. So it's never come from, this is my thing, you have to come along. It's always come from, how do we feel about this? Is this a decision that's going to work for both of us? And definitely professionally, I have found that really challenging in terms of, like I was sharing before, moving around with teaching. It's not something people say, oh, it's so easily transferable. Well, it's not. Spoiler alert, it's not. Unless you're in the same city or, state. So in terms of sacrifices, that's definitely one way to look at it, right? But every single time I go into that thinking, I like to bring myself back to the experiences that we have had, the people that we have met, the places that we have been, just the adventures that we have been on outweigh any sacrifice that I would ever be able to articulate to you, to the world, 1,000% over. And that for me is such a worthy way that we have lived our life. Would I say that when I'm packing up the fifth house?
Yeah.
The fifth house in the year? Absolutely not. But again, when I zoom out and I actually think about it, our life is so vastly different to what it would have been if we had just graduated, stayed in jobs, stayed in the same place. Not that there is absolutely anything wrong with that, but I feel like we have just had such a nourished life as a result of those choices. So,
and you spoke about, even though these sacrifices have been so, I guess, beneficial, especially when you zoom out, look at it in hindsight. Do these, I guess, sacrifices we're making as a wife and also as a mother, I'm sure you're making a ton of sacrifices. Yes. Do these still impact your mental and your mental load and your health?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I'd be lying if I said that they didn't, right? It's part of life. It is definitely something that impacts me. But what I've worked really hard on is to develop systems in place so that I can recognize when things maybe are feeling a little bit too much and then ask for and receive the help that I might need to in those periods. Equally for me, I'm in the stage where I have 2 very young children, right? So this season of life is one that is a bit hectic and does take some sacrifice and does take me stepping back purely. I'm keeping little people alive every day. Like, it's a really important job.
Yeah.
And so seeing it as that and seeing it as this is where I am right now, this season of life is a short one. And I'm really grateful that I can be here in this zone. And so the impact that has on my mental load is as long as I can see myself as an asset in the process and be able to invest in myself and be able to support myself, what that looks like in this season of life is going to be very different to other seasons of life.
And how has that allowed you to be able to share and evolve, your relationship with Jared as well, and improve that experience for yourself by getting these tools for others to help others, but also being that introspective self and saying, well, this is how I need to help my own situation?
Oh, such a good question. So Jared and I started dating when we were very young. So we've, effectively we've grown up together. We've lived many lives together. And a lot of the ways that we interact with each other now are not necessarily our default, but especially when it comes to things like regulating emotions or like feeling emotions and not boxing them and putting them on a shelf. Like, I'm a massive internalizer and so is Jared. And we've really had to challenge each other to say, if we are wanting to really grow in this space, these are some of the things that we need to do. We need to be able to communicate with each other really effectively. We need to be able to talk about the expectations that we have of each other, of our life, of where it's going. We need to be able to feel different feelings and talk about that without boxing it and then going through that volcano effect as well. So we have grown up together, and in such we've really improved the skills that we have in our relationship and had to take moments out throughout the year of saying, wow, where are we at now? Something's off. Let's figure out what that is and let's talk about that, because we could keep ignoring this for another 3 years and we could be way off path, or we can chat about it now and we can try and get on the same card and try and figure it out from there.
Beautiful.
How do you think your sacrifices have affected and shaped your thinking, your perspective, your approach? And what do you see as that being able to give that to your children moving forward as well and impart that wisdom upon them?
Yes, definitely. So I think I see myself as the central cog of our family, right? And we all are part of this team. But if I can't invest in my own self and try and grow where I can, I'm not going to be any good to the people around me, right? They are going to experience a very different version in their daily life when I am setting a tone of being exhausted and overwhelmed and drained and burnt out. So for me, it's really been that shift of seeing, I recognize that I am going to have to do things at this point in my life that are for other people. I'm needed a lot in this zone of my life. But equally, there are times that I've had to say, actually, I need to fill my own cup. I need to recognize what I need now, because as a result of doing that, I'm going to then be able to be better for you. And equally, with Jared, with the kids as well. So it's really been about learning how to do that when you want to sacrifice everything and you feel like you probably should as a mum, right? A lot of the stories is that you have to give up all of you for other people. And I recognized pretty early on that if I do that they're not going to get the best version of me. And so I need to equally figure out how I can invest in myself and try and support myself in the process so that they get more of me, the world gets more of me, and also just so that I can enjoy life too,
That's beautifully put. And, we've spent thinking back over the people we've spoken to on this podcast, and I think everyone has said, their parents have sacrificed so much for them. I've said that. So it's awesome to get, I guess, your perspective on dealing with that and the sacrifices you're making for your kids. And then I'm sure they'll be saying in however many years, mum and dad would just sacrifice so much to get me where I am. So it's really awesome to get that, perspective on it. And, you're managing, sacrificing and yourself, but still, making sure you're not spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I really if I think forward into my future, I would really not love Freddie and Ella to say, Mum was always so busy, and she was exhausted. She gave everything to us, but she had nothing left for her. Right? That's something that I don't and everyone is so different. But for me, that doesn't feel like a place that I want to be. I want to be in a space where they're like, I could see mum investing in herself, or I could see mum, there were times that obviously it was hectic, but I could see how she exhibited all these skills and scaffolded that to us. And so that becomes their norm, right? Yeah. That becomes where they can start from, instead of like, we so appreciate everything that you gave to us, but you gave us everything and you had nothing left, right? And that's a really dangerous place to be.
You're about to enter a new phase of parenting as well. I mean, you mentioned that Freddie was 6 months old when you moved here, so he's about to go to school very soon.
Yes.
So how does the mental load evolve and shift and change, and how can you change with that and encounter that change?
Oh, such a good question. And I think really the skills that I have focused on are very transferable to any season of life, right? Yep. So things like building your relationship with others, your relationship with yourself, learning how to communicate, learning how to feel your feelings, learning how to have expectations and align them to your reality, looking at what your capacity is. Those are all skills that I've really focused on, that once you learn them, you are going to be able to apply them to no matter what your circumstances are, right? Because it's impossible to have to predict a way that your life is going to be forever. Equally, in the work that I do, everyone's circumstances are so different. So for me, it's really about those deeper level skills that can be applied to any scenario that you have, and knowing how you can apply those. So when Freddie goes to school, I'm sure absolutely everything that I have right now is not going to be applicable to then, but at least the skills that I have are ones that I have practiced and failed at, and some that I've succeeded at, and then I'll apply it to that circumstance later.
We feeling fab?
I think we're feeling fab.
I'm feeling fab.
A little quick fire, Michelle.
These are stressful.
It's all right. It's pretty light, pretty simple. So we'll start with the easy one. Coffee order.
I'm an oat cap.
Oat cap.
Yeah.
First car.
First car was a Holden Astra. It was a lemon. I spent more on it in the first year than I bought it for, and it smelt like a crayon. So,
only good memories,
Success all round.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Always have been my entire life.
Restaurant recommendations.
Yes, this is a tricky one. My favourite restaurant of all time is one in Auckland called Cavavin, and it's a little wine bar there. Jared and I have spent far too much money there over the time, and just amazing food, amazing wine. Many, many memories made there. Wow. Some memories lost there.
We got a couple of Tassie recommendations, because I think we could have a whole segment about this in the show in the future.
Yeah, well, like I say, when we arrived, Freddie was 6 weeks old. So we are attempting to get out more and more, but I went to landscape and it was amazing. It was such a great experience. So I definitely recommend there.
What about you, Fab?
Me, Tassie. You think I'd have something lined up for this? Bawa.
Bawa. Yeah.
Shout out to Sunny on Elizabeth Street. Highly recommend.
Check it out.
Highly recommend.
What cuisine is it?
It changes it up, but the menu's evolving and changing all the time, so you never quite know what you're going to get in Sunny. And you have to line up, which is very Melbourne of Hobart, but
we have a new one out in Margate where we are, and it's a new brewery, Hopfields. It's amazing. You should definitely get on down there.
It's all going down.
It's so good. It's so good. We can walk there, so it's even better.
I feel like
that's incredible.
I feel like we need to recommend more Tassie places as a show. Like
an extended segment.
Absolutely.
Best advice someone has given you?
Oh, a very tricky one. And I've got 3. Can I share 3?
I love it.
The first one is just to be kind, to lead every interaction from a place of kindness. It's something that I feel very passionate about, and obviously we're humans and we should be doing that. The next one is to listen more than you speak. So obviously a lot of what I do in my job is speaking, but my dad was a wonderful listener, and he always used to say to me, you should always listen more than you speak. So I try to do that as much as I can, but it's amazing what you can pick up when you're not talking, And the last one is to just enter into the arena, which basically just means give it a go. Like if you're not out there doing courageous things, giving it a go, then you just will never know. So those are the 3.
Oh, awesome. Favorite city in the world?
Pretty cliche, but I'd say probably Paris. Love it.
Paris.
Love it.
Yeah.
What's yours, maybe?
Oh, that's a tough one. You're throwing it at me. I got engaged in Paris, so I can't. I probably can't call out it's cliche as you say, but I'm going to try and pick another one. I love New York. I really love New York. I've been to New York 3 times, and it's just magnificent. It's a magnificent city. Yeah. It's great.
Shout out Zadar in Croatia. We'll go for it.
Yeah, nice.
Family's there. If you have day to yourself, you have no responsibilities, no Jared, no kids, what are you doing?
I am assuming it's 25 to 29 degrees.
Yeah,
I am going to the beach.
Yeah.
I've got my book, I've got my coffee, and I will be at the beach in the ocean all day long.
I love that.
Yeah.
Favorite app on your phone?
Tricky one. I'm going to say Spotify. I know that's not very exciting,
That's
but
all
like
right.
entertainment
That's
for
okay.
all,
Yeah,
podcasts,
that's great.
audiobooks, kids, songs,
Yeah, yeah.
every mood.
We're about
Love
to see the year in review on Spotify too,
know.
which is, you know.
I'm nervous for mine.
I need to hear those top 5 artists next one. So
Mine's going to be, I feel like, a bit wild. But
Mine's
we'll see how it goes.
significantly skewed this year.
yeah. The Wiggles was a feature of mine for many years.
Yeah.
I know. Well, every time I go anywhere with Dream and Levi, the only song I get to hear is "Life Is a Highway."
I love it.
What are you reading, watching, listening to at the moment?
Great question. At the moment, I always have multiple books on rotation, but I'm just going to stick with the It's Almost Christmas Time, and all the D-grade Christmas movies that have just come out are filling every inch of my joy. So I'd say all the Christmas movies that I could possibly watch on
Bunch
Netflix.
just came out.
Die Hard?
Yes.
Die Hard?
Die Hard.
That's when Jared comes into it.
Yeah, nice.
He tries.
We're aligned.
And what's one thing you do to stay healthy?
I have taken up running this year. Yeah, I've never been a runner in my whole life. I had a massive story around how much I hated running. After having our daughter, I decided that was going to be something that I took up. So started really slowly, still really slow. That hasn't changed. But I've been able to run further and further and further throughout the year. And it has been really, really I feel really accomplished as a result. I've always been someone that likes, high intensity, slower weightlifting kind of exercise. So running was a massive shift for me, and also just a mind game of something that I thought I was really, really bad at, and just persisting with it and giving myself the chance to be bad at it and then getting better at it.
Yeah.
So.
Are you an alone runner, or are you a run
hell
club
yes,
runner?
Yes. I don't want to know anyone around me.
Yeah.
I just want headphones. And people that run and talk, you are sick. You need help.
I'll take 5 steps and it's just like, don't talk to me.
Yeah. I don't want to know you.
Michelle, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today on Vitamins, presented by St. Luke's. Farb, you get to obviously see Michelle every week, and you know Jared and the family really well. What a pleasure.
I know, it was so fun to have you.
Thank you. Thank you
It's
so
a different
much for inviting
perspective.
me.
All the teammates and everything, they're boring. So awesome to get to talk to you. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
Give the podcast a plug as we come out the door, Michelle.
A Mother's Mind podcast, episodes every Friday.
Oh, love it.
We'll be back shortly on Vitamins, presented by St. Luke's.
Imagine a place built to make everyone healthier. Visit a St. Luke's Wellness Hub to learn, explore, and be inspired. Just another way St. Luke's is helping to make Tasmania the healthiest island on the planet.
Welcome back to the second part of today's episode of Vitamins, presented by St. Luke's. We're so excited to be joined by Dr. Rebecca Chabot. Rebecca is the founder of Pure Wellness Tasmania. She holds a PhD in ecology. There's so many, Rebecca. I've got to read off this sheet because you've got a lot of different qualifications. A master's degree in biology and a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. Incredibly impressive. And today we're going to pick her brain about brain health. Welcome to Vitamins, Rebecca.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
You're as impressed about that list as I am, Farb.
Incredible. I got exhausted reading that list.
Yeah.
To be able to achieve that much, it's wow.
You must be the best studier going around.
I used to joke that I'm a professional student.
Yep,
Yes, that's
yep.
true. I was pretty sad when the PhD was over. I was like, oh, what can I study now? Yes, it's true. I do enjoy studying and learning. I would
Absolutely.
say I'm still learning and studying now, even though I'm not doing a degree formally.
It's a mindset, isn't it?
That's right,
You have to keep
yes.
learning about it all the time and, flex the brain, Farb.
It's a muscle I don't usually flex too often, or the people we have on this show have to flex too often. So it'll be awesome to get some insight.
We're talking about you do prep for games, you look at opponents.
100%. We use our brain a lot, getting to understand it. I think a big part of sport and basketball and how it reacts in certain situations. So hopefully get to learn a bit about it today.
Yes, definitely.
And I hear an accent, Rebecca. So what
Yes.
part of the world do you hail from?
So I'm originally from Mississippi,
Amazing.
That's
Yep.
my home, and I have lived in Tasmania now for 23 years,
Wow.
which I can't even believe. Yeah, so I moved here 23 years ago from LA. At the time I was living in California. That's where I did my master's.
Incredible. Now we know the accent, Farb.
Yeah.
Shall we get into some starting five?
That's it. You learn a little bit more about you, the starting five. Just quick who, what, when, where, why, just to learn a little bit more. When did the interest and study of the brain begin for you?
Well, I've been a scientist for over 30 years, really, as you can see from the degrees, and with a focus in biology. And I think that as I was doing all of my academic research, I was also doing study of meditation and mindfulness and yoga, and that was what was keeping me in good stead to be my best and high performing as an academic scientist, which is a very high stress environment, like being out on the basketball court. And so it was those two complementary things, the science and the introspection, that really triggered my interest in the brain, because while we think of mental health as something that's this kind of intangible thing, it's actually very much tangible because it's dictated by this physical organ, which is your brain. And so that's what got me interested in how the introspective practices that are kind of ancient and maybe not so well studied, how they can contribute to what we understand in science and start to contribute to our mental health.
It's just fascinating. But also, you've mentioned a couple places you've lived in, obviously from Mississippi.
Yes.
Now you've been here for a while. Any other places where you've spent time in your life or you've lived or really stick out to you in shaping who you are?
Definitely. So I did my undergrad degree in Memphis, Tennessee, which was an amazing part of the world to live in after Mississippi. And then from there, I lived on the northwest coast of America in Seattle. And then I lived in a few different places. At the time, I was studying coral reefs and coral reef biology and ecology, which is not a bad thing because then you get to go to where the coral reefs are. So I lived in Jamaica for a while and lived on the Great Barrier Reef a little bit doing my master's research in the Virgin Islands. And then I ended up in California to do my master's, and from there moved to Tasmania. So yes, I've lived in some pretty magnificent places.
Unbelievable.
That's some jet setting, hey?
Yeah.
Frequent fly miles.
You think, studying the brain, you'd be living in just a lab the whole time or something like that.
You've just picked the most beautiful place in the world to live. Is that the secret? Just surround yourself with the most beautiful places in the world?
That's right. Well, I wasn't actually formally studying brain science. I wasn't formally studying neuroscience. I was studying all these other aspects of science, and it was putting my life experience together with the science experience that made me passionate about the brain.
What do you like to do outside of that in terms of academic study and practice? We've talked about how important it is to get the brain right, but what do you do outside of your study and your core role?
I have a lot of energy, you can probably tell.
Absolutely.
And I love to be really physically active. So anything to do with the ocean. I'm a surfer and an ocean swimmer. I live down at Kingston Beach. I love ocean swimming. I'm also a runner. I have 3 teenagers that I spend a lot of time with. They're really beautiful and we love to travel. I love music and dancing. So I'm extremely energetic, and I think that part of my passion about what I do in terms of wellness, mental and physical wellness, is helping people understand the connection between the mental and the physical and how it all is so well intertwined. And so what's good for my physical body is also good for my mind, and what's bad for my physical body is also bad for my mind or brain.
With your role with Pure Wellness, who do you work with? Who do you spend time with in the field and trying to impact?
These days I'm working mostly with businesses, organizations, trying to get in and do workplace wellness workshops at the level of the leadership or the teams to try and empower people with those practical tools that they can use and implement in their everyday lives, simple things that we can do that have an impact on our mental wellness, on our well-being, mental and physical overall well-being. And so I'm working a lot with businesses of all different sectors, and I've been going in and helping address the issue of mental and physical well-being. And I also run retreats, wellness retreats, and I do one-on-ones as well. So a lot of that sort of stuff.
The corporate world is a really interesting one for me because obviously it's not something you necessarily associate with an office job, sitting down all day, churning out work. So how do you impact businesses, corporations, departments to try and prioritize wellness?
The way that I like to talk about mental health is instead of using the words mental health, I use the words mental fitness because it implies that there's this ongoing component to your mental well-being in the same way that we know that there is with our physical wellness. So the jack jumpers have to train regularly in order to stay really strong and fast. And the same is true for us mentally. We have to work out this muscle of the brain in order to stay strong and fast. And so it's not something that we do once a year or once every 6 months. It's something that we have to do regularly, like preferably daily, to start to strengthen the muscle of the brain, the physical organ of the brain. And that in turn impacts our physical body as well. So it's all very much interconnected. But so back to your question, what I attempt to do is give people in workplaces some practices that they can do, like meditation or breath work that you can stick into your day. You don't have to quit your job or move house or anything like that. Just some little things that you can start to do on a regular basis that will help you to become more sharp in your workplace, more focused, and also less stressed, because stress is a really big problem these days. And I'm seeing more and more that people are under the pump in terms of stress and busyness, and they're just feeling so unwell in their mental space that they then look outside of themselves for the answer, whether it's to be on medication. Whereas really, if we can start with ourselves, that's not to say that we don't often need medication, but if we can just start with doing some everyday lifestyle hacks, then we can start to feel a lot better. And that's what I'm trying to help people do.
Fubs and Luke's want to make Tasmania the healthiest island on the planet. I mean, Rebecca's obviously helping us on that journey too.
Some top insight there. You work with a wide variety of different businesses, companies like that. Is it pretty consistent, I guess, the problems you see and the things that people can kind of, the practices that people can implement? Definitely,
it's consistent. I think the one thing across the board that everyone's struggling with is stress, burnout, those sorts of things, mental illness, or just that feeling of general overwhelm and unhappiness. And these are things that, yes, they are impacted by the organization systems and policies, absolutely. But if the organization is able to take responsibility for providing a safe workplace, then I, as an individual working within that organization, can also take responsibility and start to do some things for myself that help me show up as a better human. So help me feel more relaxed and more capable of working as a team player, for example. So if I start my day with a meditation, for example, as opposed to starting my day loading up with all the things that I didn't get done during the week and feeling stressed, and then walking in the office, which scenario will I be a better worker? I'll definitely be better if I've taken some time to give myself a good restart, a reset, and then come to work in that way. So there are things that anyone can start to put into practice, including the jack jumpers. And you guys probably do a lot of breath work. Breath work is another thing that anyone can do, and it can really help to optimize your physical performance in terms of your performance on the court, and also your mental performance, so your cognitive performance at work.
And that's something that I think it's becoming more and more popular, I guess, in the athletic space, I guess, knowing and seeing that side of it. Something I do probably could be more regularly, but I do try at least a couple times a week. I just lie down 10, 15 minutes going through some breath work, things like that. And I always just find it just gets my mind away from all the issues and everything and just focus on what's going on in the here and now.
That's right.
And so that's something that I've been implementing last couple months or so, that I've been enjoying, and seeing some. I think I'm seeing some results. So
it's very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you've spoken so much about the positive impacts that your work has. So I'm just going to go into it and finish up this last question with, what is your why?
Well, my why, I guess, is that I've seen the need. I've seen that there is this need for people to better understand the science-based practices. So not so much the woo-woo, but the things that we know that science has actually shown works to boost our mental and physical health. And because of my experience in both science and the kind of ancient practices of meditation and mindfulness, I think that I'm well placed to help people learn how to do these things for themselves so that they can be their best selves, so they can show up in life feeling as well as possible. I think mental illness is very well studied and well discussed, but maybe mental wellness less so much. And I think it's important to have these conversations about what helps me feel good. I know what makes me feel bad, but what makes me feel good, and to start doing those things. And so back to your point, I love that you are doing breath work regularly. And one of the things that I teach is that we can do breath work while on the go. We don't even have to stop and lie down with our eyes closed. We can do breath work. You could do your breath work, your breathing practice, and you probably do, in the middle of a game.
Yeah.
And that will help calm your nervous system in a way that is really relevant in the heat of the moment when you're trying to focus. And so the same applies for someone at work who is in the middle of a meeting and it's getting a bit heated. They can do breath work right then and there with eyes open, and it will help them stay really calm and clear so that they can be their best selves in that moment of conflict or whatever it might be.
It's super interesting to hear you talking about that, because that's something, I've been doing on the just 3 breaths is kind of what I've been doing when my head's going a bit, a million miles an hour, just to slow it down. And as you said, bring it into the here and moment, just try and manage that stress a little bit better. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of tips and tricks that you'll have to help people just make some positive impacts on their lives. So that's awesome.
What are your best or your most powerful science-based tips on how we can sort of all become a little bit happier, a little bit more well?
So happiness is something that I love talking about. And again, I know that sometimes, especially in a corporate setting, people kind of think, oh my goodness, really, is this American chick going to talk about happiness? But it's a really relevant conversation to have, because there are things that we can do every day, multiple times a day, that we know helps us feel happier. And I think that's something that across the board, people from wherever you are want. People want to be happy. And first tip that I have is gratitude. Now, a lot of people are talking about gratitude, and that's fantastic. Gratitude is a practice, and it's something that we can practice on a daily basis that has been shown to help improve our experience of life, our outlook on life over time. So if I have a regular practice of gratitude, I actually start to change the connections in my brain. What happens is that over the course of a week, for example, if I'm starting to do a gratitude practice at the end of each day, I think of something that I'm grateful for, or 3 things that I'm grateful for. But each day they have to be 3 new things. You can't use the same thing twice. So after a few days, you come to day 3 or day 4 and you're kind of like, oh, okay, now what am I grateful for now? And you start to scan back on your day about the nice things that happened. And you think, oh, yeah, that person gave me a hug. That was really nice. And you write that thing down. And similarly, you start to think of all the nice things, the nice experiences, the sunrise, the conversations. And so in doing that, you're bringing back to mind, you're going back over the positive things that happened in your life, which we as humans tend not to do. So biologically, we're just wired to think about the negative stuff, to remember the negative stuff, to recall it and go over it and over it again and again in our minds. That's what we're wired to do. So in order to feel more happy and to be more positive, it really helps if we consciously pull up the positive things that happen in our lives, which we all can do, because there are positive things that happen each day. And so that's kind of the mechanism, the why that this actually happens. And there is research to show that over time, if you practice gratitude, you become a more positive person, which I just think is really powerful. It's simple. It's free. We all have access. We can all do it. You don't have to have degrees. You can just start to practice gratitude, and then you start to feel happier and better in your life. The second one is meditation. And anyone who's seen me talk knows that I'm a big advocate of meditation. Meditation has so many benefits for us mentally, psychologically, physically as well. And one of those benefits is in grounding ourselves in meditation in the present moment and kind of calming our nervous system, we start to feel happier. And there's just so much research on the benefits of meditation and the fact that people who long-term meditate are generally happier people. So again, it's something that we can all do. There are a lot of other benefits to meditation as well, but that's just one of them, is that it can help us feel happier. And then the third most important step to becoming happier is social connection. So we humans are tribal species, and we really benefit from interacting with other members of our species. So when we're feeling blue or down, of course, often we want to just hole up in our room and close the door and not talk to anybody. But actually, what can help us feel better is to interact with other people. And that can be deep and meaningful relationships with your family or partner or friends, or it can just be random passerbys that you have a little hello to. It makes you feel happier. It boosts your levels of happiness hormones in your body. And so there are these things that we can do. So really being focused and making a concerted effort on social connection is a great way to boost your levels of happiness. So how does that sound? What do you think?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Can I just go back to, you spoke about meditation. Can you just give us some, I don't know, just a basic idea of how to start, where to start doing that by yourself or something like that?
Oh, I'd love to, yes. So there are as many practices of meditate or forms of meditation as there are people on the planet. So there are a lot. There's no one right meditation. But the thing that I think is really important to get across is that often people think that in order to meditate, you have to close your eyes and sweep your mind clear of thought. Those people feel as if they've failed, because as soon as you do that, you close your eyes, you try to sweep your mind clear of thoughts, you fail, because we can't stop thinking. The fact is that thinking is a human process. It's involuntary, and we're going to keep doing it as long as we're alive. What we're doing when we meditate is we're not stopping thinking. We're just zooming the lens out and observing our mind thinking. So I start to notice the thoughts as they arise in my head, and rather than attach to them and kind of go down that path of the thought, I try to withdraw my attention from the thought and bring it back to whatever it is I'm trying to focus on. For example, one meditation is where you focus on your natural breath, and you're just watching the breath come in through the nose, go out of the nose. If we had more time, we'd do it. But you're watching the breath come and go, and then as soon as your mind wanders off, you start thinking about the game that's coming up or whatever it is you might be thinking about. You try to bring it back to your focal point of the breath again and again and again, and that is the practice of meditations. You can do it sitting down. You can be comfortable in a chair, on a couch, and I recommend starting with 10 minutes.
Is it something you've done?
A little bit. I guess speaking before about breathwork stuff, I guess that's kind of time where I'm just focusing, I guess, as you said, on the breath. But it's a bit more conscious, I guess. I'm really, when I'm doing that breath work, really pushing, breathing in, breathing out, and like making conscious efforts, I should say, with that. But that's something as opposed to just sitting down and identifying what's going on in my brain.
Exactly.
I don't know, it's something that I'm 100% going to give a try. That's why it's fascinating talking to you.
Oh, that's very cool.
I recall doing a lot of meditation at school, but in hindsight, that was probably the teachers saying the class is a little bit too much. I just want everyone to just be quiet and listen to a YouTube clip for 10 minutes. So
it's a good idea anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's good for the teacher. But I don't think I've ever done, the more formal meditation as an adult. So it's interesting to hear you talk about the different types, the durations, that sort of thing, because I think everyone has 10 minutes in the day to be able to go through something like that.
Exactly. It's something that everybody can do. And that is the beauty, is that these are things that we can all insert into our everyday life. And the key is being consistent with it. Like, we must do it regularly. In the same way that we train at the gym regularly, we have to train our brains to keep it agile, to keep it strong, and to grow it. The brain actually grows in size and density as we practice meditation. meditation. So it gets stronger,
Wow.
which is super cool. And
Yeah.
and we all want a strong, dense brain, you see. So,
Brain fitness. We're learning about how to get a stronger, denser brain.
And from the sporting aspect, I think it's something that's come up, in the last couple of years, 10, 15 or so years. It's always been about just training on the court. Can I get better at skills? But now people are looking at what can I do to help me stay calm in this situation? How do I think better? How do I make better decisions?
Yes.
Like things like that. So that's kind of creeping into more on the basketball basis and sure every other sport. I'm guessing that's something that just everyone, would benefit from in whatever they do in their life.
Definitely. And, elite athletes have been using this. Olympic athletes have been using breath work and meditation for years now.
We've
And
got a sports psychologist on our staff, so we have someone that we can go to and I guess just focus on that, the brain as kind of like a muscle and
yes.
trying to work on that and try to better it from that perspective.
Yes.
Mental, so it's fascinating.
What are things to avoid as well? You talk about, wellness and fitness sort of being hand in hand. What do you avoid? Is it as simple as everything that you think is probably not great for you is probably not great for you, or is it deeper than that?
Well, that's a really good question. In terms of brain health, the key to having a healthy, fit brain is to do the things that are good for the brain and not do the things that are bad for the brain. So it's very obvious, but of course we need to know what's good for it and what's bad for it. And so one of the big things that is bad for the brain is inflammation. So inflammation is that kind of ongoing chronic inflammation in our bodies is becoming more and more common and really is the underlying cause of a lot of modern diseases at the moment these days.
Yep.
And inflammation can be caused by lack of exercise. It can be caused by high inflammatory foods. So things that are high in sugar. Sugar is highly inflammatory. Highly processed foods, McDonald's, those sorts of things are very inflammatory. So having an anti-inflammatory type diet is really helpful. And then doing the things that help you to reduce inflammation. So that's one. Blood flow is another really important one for brain health. So making sure that you are getting enough flow of blood to the brain. And of course, exercise makes a difference in that. Also learning and growing. So another type of exercise is coordination exercise. This is really good for blood flow to increase blood flow to the brain. So things like ping pong or tennis, any kind of racket sports or dancing, anything that requires you to really focus on coordination. Those things are really good for the brain. And also when we have high blood pressure, it might be a little bit counterintuitive, but high blood pressure means low blood flow to the brain. So if you know that you have high blood pressure, you want to get that sorted because it means that your brain's not getting, your brain's actually a really hungry organ. It really requires a lot of blood to operate and to function. And so when we have high blood pressure, there's not enough flow to the brain and often, it's not getting the blood that it needs. And also sleep. Sleep is extremely important. It's one of those ones that people underrate, but you can be doing all the meditation in the world. And if you're not getting enough sleep at night, then, your brain and body won't be, right, won't be their best. So 7 hours minimum for adults. That's what the science says these days.
Just another question. What other tips do you have for people like in the modern world? There's so many things competing for our attention. You can open my phone and scroll and it's been 2 hours. What tips do you have for people to, I guess, maybe make a start and try to really invest in themselves?
Look, it really is. The number one tip is to make a start, to make that conscious decision that you're going to change some of your bad habits and create some new good habits. And like I said before, I really prefer to focus on the wellness side of things. So I prefer to focus on what it is that you want to add in. So for example, you're going to try and start meditating for 10 minutes every morning. So you're going to start your day off with that. You're going to start to notice the thoughts that you wake up with in the morning. That's another good one. So that first thought, as soon as you become cognizant in the morning, even sometimes before you open your eyes, what is that first thought? Usually it's all the stresses that you have, all the things that you haven't done, all the things that aren't going well. You can change that by rewriting it. And so I know it sounds a bit corny, but the first thought that I think every day is today's going to be a great day. And I choose that thought. I choose that. And as soon as I realize that I'm awake in the morning, I say to myself, today is going to be a great day. Sometimes with more enthusiasm enthusiasm than others. But it's a way for me to kind of shape the way that my own day goes. And so I guess it's really about taking a bit more responsibility for ourselves and caring for ourselves and putting in these little practices that don't require changing your job or anything like that. Just 10 minutes here or 5 minutes there, things that the choices that we can make that have a big impact on our lives. So yeah, I think it's just getting started.
Just getting started. Rebecca, thank you so much for being a part of Vitamins. It's been a fantastic pleasure to have you on. I've learned some stuff, definitely.
Awesome.
Fab, plenty for you to take back to the locker room.
Absolutely, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We're learning how to train our brains, be more mentally well, and help St. Luke's make Tasmania the healthiest island on the planet. Make sure you follow the Jack Jumpers across our social channels to stay up to date. A huge thanks to our friends at St. Luke's. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for our next episode of Vitamins.